All right, here we go. Charm City Birdwatch, episode 142. Thought I was going to take the week off. Not so fast. Not so fast. It's Saturday, 27th, recording this here in the early afternoon. I'll be honest with you, I thought I was going to get the week off. I told myself earlier in the week I was really busy. I said, you know what? What's 1 week? Wouldn't kill you to take a week off, but quite a bit happened between then and now, and I can't resist. What can I I cannot resist. This may not be the most satisfying episode, but with all of this Ravens nonsense going on social media, I couldn't just sit on the sidelines. I had to jump in. So obviously, Ravens, Twitter news, Instagram news, Twitch news, I guess you could include that as well, going to be at the forefront. Might address as well Chris Davis. I know, I can hear the groans already. Might get to Chris Davis, his annual spring training press conference, and most importantly, close things out, something that has not been discussed much up until this point on the Charm City Birdwatch podcast as far as this season. Maryland basketball had just kind of ignored it as the Ravens season was in progress. Even post-season, once the Ravens season ended, we rounded out the NFL year, did a little free agency preview, and now we're here. There's 3 games left in the season. We're on the cusp of March, and the Terps are in it. So I can't continue to leave it out of the podcast. If you're a longtime listener, you know that this used to be a staple. We would talk Terps pretty much every week. So we'll get back to that. I think it's going to be fun to get back to that. But Ravens, they're at the forefront again. And the news this week is not really fun. There's nothing good here. And everyone listening already knows pretty much everything that happened here. But I've got some thoughts. And I'll start with Dez Bryant, because I guess this was the first domino to fall this week, or the first, what do you want to call it, the first tweets sent out, Instagram posts, whatever. I also wanted to start with this because, it was just 1 week ago, or episode 141, whenever that came out, where I was asking on the podcast, out loud, wondering, just thinking to myself, saying, what would be the harm in bringing back Dez Bryant for 2021? And well, before anyone else could have a chance to answer that question, Dez Bryant himself answered that question, and apparently he has no interest in coming back to play for the Ravens, has no interest in playing for Baltimore moving forward. Oh, so he's retiring. Oh, there's the answer to your question, Nolan. Dez Bryant's going to retire. He gave it another run. Didn't get the results he wanted. Going to go back to retirement. Oh, wait, no. Oh, he's not retiring. He still wants to play. He still wants to play 2 more years, but not with the Ravens. Yeah. I don't know what to say about that either. I'm stunned. And to his credit, here on social media, sort of, answering a lot of questions from fans. Not everything was Ravens related, but the Ravens stuff made headlines, or at least caught my eye. And he was open and honest. You can give him that. He didn't hold any punches. And I don't think, for the most part, he didn't say anything out of bounds. We're going to get to somebody a little bit later here who's said some stuff that's pretty wild. So, Dez Bryant, nothing crazy. He's not bad-mouthing anybody. He said he was very appreciative of the Ravens for giving him the opportunity. Seemed like he enjoyed playing with his fellow receivers, enjoyed playing with Lamar Jackson. Who doesn't? Enjoyed playing for Coach Harbaugh. So I don't think there's any bad blood. But again, that just makes this even more confusing. I guess it just comes down to targets, which we got a couple other receivers here. Again, teasing what I'm going to talk about next, but we got some other receivers here who seem to be upset about the amount of reps they're getting. That's the only thing I can think of. But it still doesn't make sense to me overall. Now, if you remember last week, I brought this up because really this all stemmed, my entire point that I was making last week stemmed from an article by Jeff Zrebiec of The Athletic, and he said, he was looking at the Ravens' prospective free agents, and he was speculating that they would move on from Dez Bryant in 2021, the main reason being they want to go younger. That was the words he used. I love Jeff. He's my go-to guy as far as Ravens beat reporters. I think a lot of other people feel the same way. And I said last week on the podcast that move would make sense. It wouldn't shock anybody if the Ravens decided to move on from Dez Bryant. But I also asked, if you look at the depth chart, if you look at some of the other positions they need to fill this offseason, would it be the worst thing in the world to bring back Dez Bryant as a depth piece and see if, with a full offseason, a full training camp, time to work with Lamar and really the entire offense and coaching staff and everybody from day one and not be brought in mid-season, signed to the practice squad, and then try to, get your reps up to speed, get back to NFL speed, and then play in an NFL game. He did that midway through last year, and that's impressive on its own, but the end result was what? 6 catches, 40 yards, 1 touchdown? That's not going to cut it. He's not going to be expensive. That's what I also said. It's not going to, you're going to have to shell out a lot of money to bring him back. Essentially, roll the dice one more time. You rolled the dice on him this season. The fact that he played on Sundays, I think, is a win in and of itself. Why not double down? Let it ride, so to speak. But, again, Dez has answered that for us. Doesn't have any interest. Things could change. Someone could get in his ear, or he could go explore, go elsewhere, because I think this is the likely thing that's going to happen. Name me another contender. Name me another, really any team that Dez would enjoy playing for. Don't give me, the Jets, the Jaguars, some bottom feeder, although the Jaguars could be attractive if they draft Trevor Lawrence. But still, name me another contender that is a more attractive place than the Ravens, the team that gave you the opportunity in the first place. Hey, his words, not mine. I'm questioning it. We'll see. I don't know what other team's going to give him the time of day. And if one does, it's certainly not going to be a better situation than Baltimore. I guess that's that on Dez Bryant. But he wasn't alone. As I said, Willie Snead and Marquise Brown also chiming in here, and mostly Willie Snead. I'm going to include Marquise Brown because he, in today's day and age with social media, we all know the character limit on Twitter already limits what needs to be said to make a statement, I guess. That's the best way to put it. But now in 2021, you don't even need to use words. Just drop an emoji, and that's enough. So Hollywood Brown dropped a 100 emoji. Yes, the dreaded 100 emoji. Only bested in the sports Twitter world by the eyeball emojis. Need to make that clear distinction. The eyeball emojis reign supreme. When you see those in the quote tweet, it's over. When I'm scrolling through Twitter and I see the eyeball emojis, I close my app, I throw my phone across the room, and I hide under the covers. No one wants to see that. But the 100 emoji, it's a close second. So Willie Snead, sort of similar to Dez Bryant, starts with him, just with a tweet, gets some fan response, and he answers it. So here's what he says. Any receiver can be a true number one if they are in a system that allows them to be. What they do after that is on him. Obviously, a lot of Ravens fans, NFL fans in general, caught on to this, asked him to expand on that. Are you not happy with the amount of targets you're getting? Or some people jumping on him and saying, hey, you're not a true number one. Shut up. What are you complaining about? Blah, blah, blah. You know how Twitter is. So he follows that up one. This was in response to somebody. He's clarifying, most likely on the topic of what constitutes a number one wide receiver. Snead goes on to say, any receiver that is, quote, worth a damn would turn 100 targets into a very productive season and be considered a number one wide receiver. Paraphrasing most of that, but his quote, any receiver worth a damn would do that. 100 targets, I guess, is the threshold, and any good receiver would take 100 targets and turn it into a good season, over 1,000 yards, handful of touchdowns at least. That obviously got even more people riled up, even more people having to chime in. But I got to be honest with you, I think a lot of people are caught up here in the fact that he's talking about a number one wide receiver. I got a whole different issue with this. And I try not to spend too much time on Twitter because it's a cesspool, but from my perspective, a lot of the conversation around this and a lot of the gripe and the back and forth, the disputes, the arguments has been over him classifying or what classifies a number one wide receiver. Who cares? That's not important here. You're just arguing semantics. Are you because you're either someone who thinks every team technically has a number one wide receiver, as in who's the most productive, who gets the most targets, whatever, or you classify a number one receiver based on how they stack up against the rest of the league. So we know the number ones, Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, Mike Evans, those type of guys, they're the number one wide receivers. The ones that you say, oh, they're the top producers. And not every team would technically at that point have a number one, and I'm doing air quotes with my fingers here, a number one wide receiver. So like the Ravens, is it Willie Snead? Is it Hollywood Brown? At the receiver position, I mean, if you want to include all pass catchers, I think it's clearly Mark Andrews, but just wide receivers, it's either Snead or it's Marquise Brown, and neither of them have the targets to really produce the yardage, and neither of them have really the touchdowns. So, I understand that. It feels weird to classify them as a number one in the sense that you would call Mike Evans, Hopkins, Adams, those guys are number ones. I can't say that, oh, yeah, Willie Snead or Hollywood Brown, they're number one. But again, it's just semantics. Who cares? You're either on one side or the other. It doesn't matter. The point here for me is Snead seems to be upset about the amount of reps he was getting the last 2 years in Baltimore. Signed in 2018 at the time, was brought in the same offseason. They got Michael Crabtree, John Brown, some new weapons for Joe Flacco. Crabtree didn't work out, not that surprising. It was another, retread over the hill receiver. But Willie Snead was an exciting acquisition, and so was John Brown, because we know Flacco liked to throw the deep ball. John Brown, tremendous deep ball threat, and they did some great things, him and Joe. And, Willie Snead also had some great moments. Nice number 3 wide receiver, not afraid of contact, fights for every yard. Then on top of that, pretty exceptional blocking wide receiver, which allowed him to be the only one of those 3 that was brought in that offseason that stayed with the team beyond 2018. It's because Willie Snead was useful to the Lamar Jackson-led offense. He's not just a pass catcher. He does everything. He's a valuable every down wide receiver. I like Willie Snead. I would like if the Ravens kept him. But now after these tweets, I'm questioning if he's in the Dez Bryant mindset. Does he want an opportunity with another team? Does he want a chance to get more reps in, catch some more passes? most likely have more yards, maybe a couple more touchdowns. But it's almost the same thing that I'm talking about here with Dez. Like, where are you going to go? Let me rephrase that. Snead would have plenty of offers. Way more than Dez Bryant, for sure. It's not really a where would you go? It's more of a, are you going to trade this opportunity you have here in Baltimore? You know, the last 2 seasons you've gone 25-7. You're going to trade winning for 50 more reps, 50 more targets, and maybe with a contender? You might go play for a team that's ceiling is 8-8, 9-7, miss the playoffs, maybe sneaks in as a wild card. But you get 50 more reps. Is that really what you want? I'm just asking, because if it is, go ahead, be my guest, please. But from my perspective, and I'm only a fan, I'm just telling you the perspective of a fan, someone who watches the games, someone who follows the team. It doesn't make much sense from my perspective. And to the point of Marquise Brown dropping the 100 emoji, saying that he agrees with Willie Snead, his original point, the first tweet, any wide receiver can be a true number one in the right system that allows them to be. Hollywood agrees with that. Is he upset with Greg Roman? Well, now here's where I got to step back and say, you know what, Marquise, I feel like I've been pretty reasonable with you on this podcast. I didn't jump on the hate train that he was getting. I was pretty honest. The drops had to, the drops were an issue. I also simultaneously think that he could have been utilized better. That's where I stand. I still do. But your point here about, any receiver can be a number one in the right system, again, I agree. Hey, let's use you in some other ways. Let's get Marquise Brown involved as a weapon. But if you want to be a number one wide receiver, which everyone in Baltimore wants you to be, you were drafted in the first round, you have a unique skill set, you have the potential to be a number one wide receiver or produce like one. No reason you can't. And the system is certainly part of that, but I'm not going to take any receiver seriously that says they want to be a true number one, and the first thing they're not addressing is their hands. Marquise, you dropped, I don't even know how many uncontested passes. Passes that were put right between your numbers, right in front of your face. They weren't behind you. They weren't way above your head. They weren't down at the shoelaces. Lamar put the ball where it needed to be, and you dropped it. Not once, not twice. It wasn't here and there. It was in so many games, so many crucial opportunities. You were able to rebound. You were able to come up with the play of the season, the touchdown pass you caught against Cleveland. But let's not forget a drive before that when Trace McSorley was still in the game at quarterback while Lamar was in the locker room. You're trying to convert on a 3rd and 5, a 3rd and 6. Trace McSorley put one right in your numbers, and you let it bounce off your chest. Why? Because you insist on whether it's a 50-yard bomb where you're running under the ball or just a 5-yard out route. You insist on letting the ball come to your chest and trapping it with your arms. Get your hands out. Name me a successful receiver in this league with that kind of technique. This didn't come up a couple weeks ago, but it just popped into my head. The Super Bowl. Buccaneers run a goal line play. They pull out a little trick play. I cannot remember the name of the offensive lineman, but you all remember the play. He reports eligible, rolls out, fakes the block. Brady throws up a lob. This lineman's wide open. The ball is coming down. Almost catches it, but at the last second, the defender lays into him, breaks it up. almost a really great highlight play, a Super Bowl highlight that will live on forever. A lineman catching a touchdown. Not surprising that he didn't complete it because he's a lineman. But go back and watch that play. It was a lob, so the ball was coming down from up in the air. It wasn't a direct bullet pass. But look at the lineman. Look at where his arms and his hands are. He's got his hands out in front of him making the triangle, ready to receive the ball. How does an offensive lineman running a trick play have better technique than Marquise Brown? And look, hey, I've got scrawny arms too. All right, I know if you threw that pass to me, I'd probably try to use the same technique. Because, one, I'm not an NFL receiver, so I don't have a receiver's technique, and I feel like that would be my best opportunity, would be try to trap the ball. But I am not a professional athlete. I'm not even sniffing high school ball. You go have me line up and play high school ball right now. It's not even going to happen. I bet Pee Wee football would probably run circles around me as well. I'm not in the NFL. Marquise Brown is, and his technique does not reflect that. Even the play he made, the touchdown grab where Lamar comes back on fourth down, they convert, get the touchdown. Marquise doesn't get his hands out. He waits for it to come and hit his chest and traps the ball. I have to question the fundamentals here, the technique. You can talk about the scheme all you want, and I'll agree with you to some extent. I think they can certainly use you in more effective ways. But we got to start with the basics. You got to catch the ball. Let's say the Ravens were a traditional mixed run-pass offense or even a pass-heavy offense. Why should you get 100 reps? Why should you get over 100 targets if you can't catch the ball? The theme of the day doesn't make sense. You want something else that doesn't make sense? How about Matt Judon? And this will wrap up our weekly Twitter and Instagram roundup here for the Ravens, and I hope that I never have to do one of these again. But this one was the most absurd of the week, and everyone pretty much knows what happens. Matt Judon took to Twitter, Instagram, called out ESPN Ravens reporter Jamison Hensley, called him a liar. Hensley had reported that the team offered Judon a contract over the past summer after they had signed the franchise tag. Signed to a franchise tag, let's try to work out a long-term deal. According to Hensley, they offered him one, I believe, somewhere in the $20 million per year ballpark. Judon has come out, countered that, says that it's BS, said a lot of other things. But the most important thing that I want to focus on with Judon, because before we get into all of the other nonsense that he was talking about, this one point still does stand and makes this an interesting situation somewhat. Judon says, no, that's not true. By league rule, the Ravens couldn't offer me a contract in that time frame, and he's not wrong. That is true. By league rules, after that certain deadline or whatever, whenever Hensley was claiming, according to his source, that this contract was offered, it would be in violation of league rules. Now, there's a couple things here. One, Judon is fair to say that. I can understand why he would be upset, and he's fair to say that's not true because it's against league rule. They didn't do it. Leave it at that. That stands on its own. You want to counter a report? Present evidence that says otherwise, and Judon certainly did that. Just leave it at that, man. Maybe crack a joke. You can call him a liar. It's whatever. You presented your side of the story. Let's leave it at that. Should also be noted that the Ravens, it's very possible the Ravens violated league rules. Don't laugh, it's possible. I'm not leaving that out. Maybe this is true, and the Ravens did offer him a contract, and Judon is trying to cover for that. I don't know. I think in that scenario, if you're Judon, you would just choose to ignore it instead of bringing a ton of attention to it like he did, because now at this point, if I'm the league, I really can't help myself but investigate this a little bit further. Did the Ravens actually offer him a contract when they shouldn't have? The league should have their ears perked up by this. If Judon never addressed this, never said anything, just ignored it, no one would be talking about it. But he comes out, calls him a liar, presents his side, said that the Ravens didn't do it because they're not allowed to by league rules. Now it's a big headline. You want to make it an even bigger headline? Matt Judon did just that by being the extremely childish person that he is. Went ahead and made up a lie of his own to essentially, in his mind, probably give Jamison Hensley a taste of his own medicine. Retract your statement, or I will, quote, release those photos of you at the strip club cheating on your wife. Judon that didn't happen. It's a joke. Like, we get that. I hope we do, because I think we do, but at the same time, from what I've heard and seen, I think there's some people out there who think that might be true. And that's almost even more concerning than the situation in itself. It's a joke. It doesn't make it okay. It's over the top. It's stupid. It's ridiculous. And again, it makes Matt Judon look like a childish crybaby. So you try to, say, hey, I'll make up something about you because you reported this about me and my money and my contract and what I'm seeking. I'm going to make up something about you, and now we're even. Blah, blah, blah. Maybe that's how things operate in, the elementary school hallways on the playground, but not in the NFL. Or really not amongst any real adults, any real adult discourse. At least the conversations I'm having, that wouldn't come up. But again, that's who Judon is. He's a class clown. He likes to joke around. He likes to troll. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. Terrell Suggs, my favorite Ravens player of all time. The king of the trolls. The king of joking around. But you know what else Terrell Suggs was? He's a future Hall of Famer. And everything that came out of his mouth was backed up on the field. Judon can't say the same thing. Talks a lot, doesn't perform a lot. All bark, no bite. I probably should just be laughing about this. Shouldn't be mad about it. And I don't think I am mad about it. But the more I think about it, just such clownish behavior by Judon. Speaking of clowns, no, I'm kidding. This past week, we had a tradition unlike any other. No, I'm not talking about the Masters. I'm talking about Chris Davis's annual spring training press conference. Now, if you missed it and you're having trouble finding the audio, finding the video of it on the internet, don't worry. You can always go back and watch the one from 2020 or 2019, and you'll get pretty much the same responses. What do we expect? The team still has not moved on from him. He's still with the Orioles, still here, at least under Brandon Hyde. The past 2 years, he has been phased out. He's been given less, at-bats. He's been put in the starting lineup less. There's been a little bit of injuries here and there that have contributed to that. But I give Brandon Hyde credit because he did something that Buck Showalter didn't do for some God knows reason. And I love Buck. We all love Buck. He was great. I miss him as the manager. Loved his attitude. I love the way he approached the game, and I love what he did in bringing the Orioles back to relevancy. But I still don't know what the hell he was doing in his last year as the manager in 2018, consistently giving Chris Davis cleanup reps. Had him penciled into that 4 slot in the lineup card day after day after day, and then when he finally moved him down in the lineup, he still played like a full season. Never benched him, never gave someone else time at first base, just kept trotting Chris Davis out there, and nothing changed. Well, Brandon Hyde comes in, and things are finally changing. Chris Davis is sitting on the bench. He's not playing. That's the way it should be. Really, he shouldn't be on the team. He should just cut bait. Nothing's going to magically change where Chris Davis is going to hit 250 this year and 25, 30 home runs. It's not going to happen. He's not even going to hit 200 and crack 15 home runs. As a ball player, he's done. As a human being, as a man, I got nothing but respect for him. The amount of money, the amount of time that he's donated to charitable initiatives in the city is really something that I don't think gets talked about enough. People bring it up. It's part of the Chris Davis conversation. They say, yeah, but he's such a good guy. And they do mention it. But if you really look at how much money he's put into initiatives and how much time and stuff and that's just what we know of. I mean, who knows how much other stuff he's done behind the scenes, not for cameras, that doesn't get picked up by news outlets. It's really unmatched. So Chris Davis, nothing but respect for the guy. But as a ball player, it's over. And I don't want to hear what's the harm? The Orioles aren't competitive. Why not just have him there? You know, you don't have to start him every day, but there's no harm in having him on the bench. What benefit is there to having him on the bench? That's my question. You can say what the harm is. What's the benefit? He doesn't provide anything. You're paying him I get it. You're paying him regardless. Just move on. Because at the very least, we wouldn't have this headache every year. At the very least, we wouldn't have this stupid press conference every year. What are you changing? How's your mental health? Do you still love the game of baseball? Ooh. If he wasn't on the team, we wouldn't have to deal with this at the very least. We wouldn't have to deal with the Chris Davis conversation. We wouldn't have to deal with the jokes. But no, we're going to keep him around in the off chance that he somehow hits 200, which is just a laughable statement in and of itself. 200 is like a ceiling for this guy right now. The Chris Davis conversation is boring. I'm not going to waste any more time on this. We've been talking about it for years. It's been 3 years since Jim Palmer called him out mid-season for not making adjustments, putting in effort in the offseason, not changing his batting stance. Well, I guess last thing to say, apparently Davis is going to change his batting stance or his approach. He says, quote, there will be noticeable adjustments. You will be able to see them. It will not be so small that you can't pick up on it. So tomorrow's the day, and I don't know if it's going to be broadcast on TV or not or streamed anywhere, but I guess we will get an answer from all the beat reporters that are there. But according to him, there will be noticeable changes. It's time to move on. It's been time to move on. I think it's time for me to move on to the next topic. Let's talk about something good here, huh? Let's close the podcast on a good note. Maryland basketball, something I have not talked about one bit this season. I have not mentioned the Terps in their 2020-2021 season. Shame on me. Because it's been a rather interesting season in a lot of ways. But with 3 games left, next one is tomorrow against Michigan State. 3 games left in the regular season. Mark Turgeon has his team playing the best basketball they have all year. When have you ever said that? When have we ever said Mark Turgeon has his team playing their best ball in late February? Never. Not even last year, not even in 2016 with his previous 2 best teams. Both of them had their stumbles down the stretch. But this year's different. And I guess it's only fitting with all the other weird stuff that's happened in this college basketball year where teams like Duke and Michigan State and North Carolina are not in the top 25 or looking to be a top 1 or 2 seed. They're on the outside looking in. But if you want to just look at Maryland by themselves, they've had a weird season. 4 wins against top 25 teams, 3 of which came on the road. They also have wins against fringe top 25 teams like Minnesota and Rutgers. They've got the resume. And playing in the Big Ten, it's a blessing and a curse at the same time in that regard. It sucks when you got to play 4 or 5 ranked teams in a row. But at the same time, for a team like Maryland, who's, been on the bubble pretty much all season, or trying to get on the bubble and try to get into the March Madness tournament, trying to get into the tournament, playing that many ranked teams is also a great opportunity to pick up some resume-building wins, and they've done that. They've also lost their fair share to top 25 teams. They've been embarrassed by teams like Michigan and Iowa, but they've got their wins. And now, with 3 games left against Michigan State, Northwestern, and Penn State, 3 non-ranked teams, Michigan State, the only one that you should be really scared of because they're playing their best ball right now at the same time. But Northwestern and Penn State, they're bottom feeders. I know the Terps always have trouble with Penn State, but, if they get past Michigan State tomorrow and they beat them, you got to finish the job. You got to beat these bottom feeders and roll into the tournament, roll into the Big Ten tournament, that is, with momentum. And a sweep here, a 3-game sweep to finish the season, I think would comfortably move them into the 10 seed. At least right now, they're like pretty much all the tournament predictors, Joe Lunardi and all the other people out there that do their predictions and whatnot. They pretty much all have Maryland in the big dance, but they vary at what seed. At the very least, everyone's got them at like an 11. Joe Lunardi even has them as a 9 right now. So I think with a 3-game sweep here, you close out the season, win these last 3 games, Maryland can comfortably go into March as a 10 seed, which would be great. You don't want to be an 11. I mean, it'd be great just to make it. That would be an accomplishment. Get off of the 11, because as an 11, you might have to be the play-in team, and you don't want to do that. You don't want to have to do the play-in game against another 11 seed just to play the 6. No one wants to do that. But as a 10, going up against a 7, pretty even matchup. Winner probably faces a 2 seed in that region. And again, like I said, just to make the tournament would be an accomplishment this year, because this Terps team just doesn't have the star power that they've had in past years. They don't have an alpha on offense. They don't have an Anthony Cowan or a Jalen Smith. They just don't have that guy. They've got a bunch of solid guys, and any given night, one of them can step up and be the leading scorer. Ayala, Wiggins, Dante Scott. But none of them are just the alpha on offense that when you need a basket, they can go and get it. But offense isn't this team's identity. It's defense. And while they don't have an alpha on offense, they do have an alpha on defense in Daryl Morcell. And that really down the stretch here, between his vocal leadership on the court and Turgeon and what he's doing as a coach, they've embraced their defensive identity. They are a top 25 defensive team in the country. Top 30 at least. They can make up for their lack of offensive firepower by bringing their opponent down to their level. And they've done that many times this year. It's not a conventional way to play college ball. And if you're not a Terps fan, even if you are a Terps fan, it's downright ugly to watch at times. In the Big Ten schedule this year, in conference play, they have held an opponent to 65 points or less 8 times. Now you have, Penn State and Nebraska in there that account for a couple of those, but they've held Illinois, Wisconsin, Purdue. They've held all of those teams. Really strong offensive teams to under 65 points, in some cases under 60. That shouldn't be ignored. They have the defensive capability to bring their opponent down to their level and make every single game a rock fight. They can make any game ugly as possible. People talk about Virginia and how they dictate the pace of the game because they play so slow that they force the other team to play to their speed, and that's how they've been so successful. But they're a good offensive team. They play slow, but they're every possession matters. They very rarely have empty possessions. They don't turn it over. They move the ball well. They pass well, and they always take good shots. Maryland isn't the case, but they get a similar effect in that they bring their opponent down to their level, and they have the ability to make things even. As ugly as it may be, it's even. And if they're going to do anything in March, they're going to do anything in the Big Ten tournament, it's going to have to be on the shoulders of their defense. Really, since the last time we probably talked about Mark Turgeon and the Terps on this podcast, I've actually changed my perspective on Turgeon. I used to defend him. Myself and Ian, we would say that, this talk about Maryland being a perennial top 20, top 15 program, it's just they've never been that, and I still think that's true outside of, these stretches of, 5 to 10, really not even 10, 5 to 8 years at a time. Maryland hasn't been that. They've never been that consistently. Gary got them to a point where they went to back-to-back Final Fours. They won the championship. They were a great team for, a stretch of years. But then what did he do after that? Like the last decade of Gary being here, they had a similar track record to what we've seen in Mark Turgeon's last 10 years. Made the tournament the same amount of times, made the Sweet 16 the same amount of times, but no one talks about that. Gary's got his name on the court, and he deserves it. So it's hard to be that kind of team in the NCAA, and really that's reserved for Michigan State, Duke, North Carolina, Kansas, Kentucky. Those are the teams. Those are the blue bloods. Maryland's not going to be a blue blood. They could be more consistent than they are. I'll agree with you. I'd love it if they were top 15 every year, but that's never been who they are for an extended period of time. Little 5-year chunks, 6-year, 7-year chunks, sure. But consistently, no, it hasn't happened. But as far as Turgeon as coach, look, I'm done with him. I can't defend him anymore. It's time for him to go. It just is. I don't like, his attitude at this point. It's wearing on me, the way he talks and everything. I'm done with it. It's annoying. Never takes accountability. Always, blames the players. The players don't listen. The players don't do this. The players don't do that. It's like, well, what are you doing? You've been the coach of this team for 10 years, and turnovers, lack of offensive efficiency has always been an issue. Whether it's your poor teams or your really good teams, it's always been an issue. So what's the deal? Because honestly, when you keep bringing up the fact that the team doesn't listen to you, it's not just this year. It's been even, again, last year in a really good team. When they would have bad games, guys just don't listen to me. That's not having the effect that you think it is. That's not the message that you think you're sending, Turgeon. Like when he says, the team doesn't listen to me, I feel like in his head he's like, they're going to think that I'm trying really hard as a coach, but like I'm the victim here. No, when you keep saying the team doesn't listen to me, it's a self-own. Basically calling yourself a terrible coach. When a coach can't get through to his team year after year after year, it's not on the players at that point, my friend. It's on you. But even I'll admit that if they make the tournament this year, I will be impressed, and I will give him his credit because they would, seemingly finish the season on a hot streak, which, again, they've never done. And with the talent they've had, you lose Anthony Cowan, you lose Jalen Smith, you lose a bunch of bench players, the Mitchell twins. Who else left? Ricky Lindo, Sorrell Smith, you lost bench players. And if he gets this team to the tournament, not only with the talent level they have, playing the schedule they have in the Big Ten, but with all the COVID stuff too, and having to navigate that. If they make the tournament, I salute Mark Turgeon. It's an accomplishment. So we'll see. Nonetheless, I'm excited. Look, if Maryland was, a bottom feeder like Northwestern or Penn State and only had 1 or 2 Big Ten wins, I'd still be excited for March Madness because we didn't have it last year. So just the fact that we're going to have it in 2021 is exciting enough for me. If you're a listener out there and you know me personally, you know that my birthday is in March. It's March 20th. So every year, my birthday usually lines up around the weekend of the first four, or the the first 2 rounds. Starts on that Thursday. Now this year it's different. I don't like what they're doing this year, by the way. Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday, Monday for the second round. What are we doing? I can't complain too much. We are getting the tournament, so that's all that matters. But I always look forward to March. The weather gets warmer. Baseball comes back with spring training. March Madness. St. Patrick's Day. It's a great month. But last year it was downright depressing. That'll do it for episode 142. Thank you for listening to me ramble for God knows how long that was. I don't even know. That might have been, who knows here. That's about an hour. Always fun. Thought for a second I wasn't going to do one this week. I couldn't stay away. You guys know me. I couldn't stay away. Ravens gave me plenty to talk about, and I had to get the Terps in there. So moving forward, we'll be talking about that. Spring training action starts this week. I'm sure I'll have something to say about that moving forward. More Ravens offseason news as we move towards the start of free agency in mid-March. And, of course, March Madness. What are the Terps doing? But spread the word. Tell a coworker, tell a friend, tell a family member that likes the Ravens, the Orioles, the Terps, sports fan in general. Tell them about the podcast. If they ask where they can find it, say, dude, come on, it's 2021. Wherever you find podcasts is where you can find the Charm City Birdwatch podcast. Apple, Spotify, Google Play, if that's even still a thing. I think they're taking that away. I haven't even looked. TuneIn, I think we're still on TuneIn. I don't know. The feed to that might have blown up 6 months ago, and I never noticed. If you're our one listener on TuneIn, shout out to you. And YouTube, of course, you have the video on YouTube. Subscribe on all the platforms. Even if you listen on one, subscribe on all of them. Get those numbers up. Leave a review on Apple. I'm going in. I need numbers this week. I want to see reviews. I want to see organic growth. All right. That's 142. I'll be here next week. Talk to you then.